right. Where are you? You need to go to live. Yeah. Beauty. I think we're on. Hey, Dolphin's here. Hippie's here. Hello, hello. All right. Just a quick sound check. Can you hear my voice anywhere, everyone? Hi, Nitz. I hope you're looking okay. Looking forward to this evening. Very good, Lucy. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, I'm hoping you can hear me. Can someone just mention if they can hear me or not? We had I did a Discord thing with our members the other night, and yeah, my mic wasn't working. So if someone can let me know. Yep, beautiful. Thank you, Chantal. All right. G'day, folks. I've just finished all our forecasts for our members this evening, so we're going to share those directly with you. So you're going to get exactly the information that they got only a few minutes later as well. My name's Chris Nitzer. I'm lead forecaster at Weather IQ. Obviously, our main talking point tonight is the Coral Sea Low. Its effects on this northeast Queensland coastline between Cooktown and Mackay. And then also looking further afield, what it's going to do longer term. And then we need to talk quickly about the NT. There's a low there that's going to stuff around the base of the top end and could drive a fair bit of rain into the NT, particularly areas just south of Darwin, but even Darwin City's a good chance of picking some of that up. So we've got a lot of members from Darwin and we've got a lot of followers from Darwin, so we do need to give them some respect and show them some respect with that system as well. And just briefly, we need to mention the WA stuff. None of that's really going to impact the coast too much. And even though we have a lot of followers from Port Hedland or Karratha, there's no point really talking about it because it's not going to do too much. But we do a couple of token minutes at the end on that one. Right. So without further ado, what we're going to do is talk to you. Or give you a look at what we just sent to the subscribers for the Cooktown to Mackay region. And that goes for about 20 minutes. So that's one of the things with my videos. They take a little bit of time. So they're pretty comprehensive. And then after that, we're going to look at the North Oz Tropics Watch video. That's another 20 minutes. And that one will go through the forecast after this low goes past the coast and then starts to move to the southeast. So for those of you in southern and central Queensland, you're probably going to need to watch that one there more so than this one here. So that one will be in the second 20-minute stint. Then after the 40 minutes of the two systems, and by the way, 5 minutes on the 5 minutes on the NT system in that second 20-minute lot. So it'll be 15 on the Queensland, 5 on the NT, and then maybe 1 or 2 on the WA stuff. And the other thing we talk about in this one, in the second lot of the 20, is there's a second low signal coming in from the Solomon Islands. So we just briefly mention that and just sort of talk you through that as well. All right, so before we get started, Fair Income Builds up there on the top left. Fair Income Builds are our major sponsor. We thank them for their major sponsorship. And Shed Safe accredited shed kits come in very handy at this time of year. And folks, just a reminder, if you do want to support us, you're supporting us right now by clicking the like button on the YouTube and on the YouTube. How old am I? On the YouTube. On YouTube and on Facey. So that'll be great if you could. And we're also on X. So if you're watching it on X, just hit the like on X as well. That's a great way you can support us. Writing a comment is a great way you can support us. Asking a question is a great way because that helps to feed the algorithm. Yeah, being a dickhead's a great way too, because then I jump on you and then everyone watches my rants. So that's another way you can support us, by being a dickhead. You won't last long, but it's a way to get the algorithm going, and by subscribing. So if you do have the financial means to do so, we have a subscription service, and you get all these forecasts that I'm talking about now. You get them on a daily basis, sometimes morning and night, if that's a good thing, I don't know. And they start at $32.95 a year, so it's not going to break your bank, but it really helps the channel out, really helps us out doing what we do. So $32.95 a year gets you all my forecasts. $69.95 gets you everything that we've got to offer. All right, that includes all the models, the radar, all the stuff. All right, without further ado, that was enough ado. Let's have a look at what we're discussing tonight. So just in the interest, sorry, for those of you that are new, just in the interest of saving my voice and me not having to say the same things over and over again, I show you the pre-recorded video, and then at the end, we ask for questions and that sort of thing, and we'll try and go through as many questions as I can before my voice gives out.
Good evening, ladies and gents. Welcome to a Weather IQ PM update for the Cooktown to Townsville coastline, looking at the on-the-ground effects of the system on the Cooktown to Townsville coastline as it crosses the coast tomorrow. This update, as always, brought to you by TownsvilleSheds.com, and this update is also going out for free to the non-members on YouTube and Facebook as part of our live broadcast. So welcome to those folks as well. Right, radar-derived rainfall since 9 o'clock this morning have been very significant up there in the Daintree region. No surprises there, was there? And we've seen falls in the last 24 hours in excess of 100 millimetres, upwards of 200 millimetres in a couple of spots. So there have been great rainfalls. We've just started to see them filter southwards a touch, but at this stage, most of the heavier falls have been in the Daintree and up towards Cooktown. We take that out to 256k, and we can certainly see that, there's been some big numbers. 100 to 200 mils have fallen in the last 24 hours in many, many areas up here in the North Tropical Coast region. As I mentioned, we are just starting to see some shower activity coming into the Cairns district this evening. The other thing we can see in base velocity, constant altitude velocity scan, and even the base scan to some extent, showing us that there's some very, very strong winds here. So hopefully folks have taken the warnings on board and not gone out on the water. It's been a much quieter period further to the south, down towards the Townsville district, as expected. No major rainfall through there yet. Right, now let's have a look at what's going to happen with this system. Firstly, let's have a look at landfall before we start looking at rain and stuff. Because the system is so weak, ensemble tracks are variable. They're quite variable, but generally speaking, the system has been motoring to the west, so I'm inclined to believe the blue ones a bit more than the green ones, where the system goes. So basically, it's following the blue line as opposed to the green line. So the idea is, the reason they're struggling, of course, is because the system's so weak, and also the algorithms in the models are struggling to find the centre of circulation. You can see the algorithm here started with the model, with the centre up here. The algorithm here started with the centre here. This is where the centre was in real life, and this is where the centre is now in real life. So we're inclined to follow the blue estimates rather than the green ones. And the blue estimates are indicating a coastal crossing between Innisfail and Port Douglas in the vicinity of Cairns, plus or minus 100k. And once again, it doesn't matter because it's not about the centre in this one, all right? So it's not about tracking the centre. Forget about the centre. Centre's coming through at about 1,000 hectopascals, maybe 999, 998, something like that, all right? So absolutely nothing to worry about the centre. What we want to worry about here is going to be what effects does the circulation in general going to have, is the circulation in general going to have across North Queensland. One of the biggest issues we have with these weak systems is, especially when this is going out to the general public, I know you folks that are subscribers understand this, but for the general public, they often follow the centre of circulation, which is fantastic, great thing to do when you're dealing with a properly structured cyclone. When you're dealing with this garbage, absolutely no reason to be following the centre exactly, okay? Because the strongest weather here is not going to be anywhere near the centre. Let's have a look at what I mean. Okay, so we can see why the algorithms have been struggling with the system, because it's got two centres. It's got one out here and one out here, and they're not sure which one to cotton onto and which one to actually trust as the centre. Now, the centre is going to eventually find itself into sort of contraction into one centre of circulation. So those two centres at the moment are going to find themselves contracting into one centre. That's what's happening right now as we're talking. And then as we go into tonight, that one centre will, once it consolidates, begin tracking towards the coast. And we see that track relatively slowly getting to the coastline in the vicinity of Cairns, and you can see that there. Very, very weak circulation. You can see sort of makes landfall and then grazes the coast as it drifts southwards towards the Innisfail Tully area. From there, the system basically washes out to a trough almost immediately, and the trough then heads inland. And that's the important part. The trough then heads inland. So let's have a look at what effect that's going to have on the coast. Now that we know we don't need to be tracking the centre, we do need to be tracking what happens after the centre comes onto the coast. By the way, the strongest winds from the cyclone circulation are currently occurring, okay? So just be aware, it's not going to get much worse than this. We get to about 10 p.m, 1 a.m. and 4 a.m, and we can see strongest winds are starting to die down. Once they turn easterly, they actually start to die down a little bit, even though the cyclone approaches the coast. And that's, once again, another reason why we don't want to just focus on the centre, all right? Because the centre has very little bearing in actual severe weather. The severe weather is happening out to sea and ahead of the system circulation. All right, so from a general rainfall perspective, let's have a look at what we can anticipate over the course of the next few hours. So this evening, we're going to start to see showers increasing in the Cairns district and down through Innisfail and Tully, and we're going to see heavy rainfall continue through the Cooktown area. And then we're going to start to see rainfall just sort of thicken up throughout the entire region here on the western side of the circulation. We'll talk about why the west and the northwest has been so potent in this system in another update called the technical, or the North Oz Tropics Watch. So make sure you're checking that out if you're interested in the technicalities. Outside of that, we've got significant rainfall development this evening, and as we get into the overnight period, we see our first wave of showers extending down to the Whitsundays. All right, so that's our first wave of showers coming onto the coast south of the system. So far south of the system, outside of Innisfail, which is going to get showers anyway in a southeasterly, we haven't seen too much by way of significant rain. You can still see, though, even overnight tonight, there's plenty of rain still up around the Cooktown area, and that's once again associated with something else we'll talk about in the technical update. But generally speaking, that's our rainfall there. So you can see showers quite heavy at times. Once again, who cares? Because it's too weak to care. All right, but the idea is that we're going to spread rain westwards and we're going to spread rain southwards as the system crosses, and especially after the system crosses the coast. So we're going to see widespread shower activity as the system comes onto the coast. Heavy rainfall continues to push out to the west as the system weakens quickly into a trough, and we're going to maintain quite heavy showers. Now, the good thing about Cooktown and the Daintree, there's no major follow-up rainfall here, right? So we do settle things down over there. Now, as we get into Friday night, Saturday morning, we see a redevelopment of heavy rainfall activity again around the Townsville coastline, Bowen, Whitsundays, Mackay coastline, and maybe just offshore off the Cairns coastline. So we'll be watching this like a hawk, because sometimes these little thin strips of heavy rain just nudge the coast. We saw a great example just about a month or so ago in Yarrabah. They got 200 mils out of one of these, where it just sat right over the top of them in a thin strip. So at the moment, the model's telling us that thin strip might be a little bit thicker than just a thin strip, but it's likely to be just offshore. But that's what we're looking for on Friday night, Saturday morning, is to see whether or not the models have got that spot on, or whether they might be off just a touch. And we do see some of that really intense rain on the coast. Outside of that, we see a curvature of the flow, which drives the rain onshore in the Townsville district and the Mackay district. Heavy rain pushing out towards the northwest. All right, into the morning on Saturday, we're waking up to intermittent heavy showers right across that central and North Queensland coastline. We're still watching for that little thin strip of very heavy rain off the coast of Cairns, and we're watching for heavy rain around the Gulf country. Moving on into Saturday afternoon, we're watching for showers and thunderstorms developing on the tablelands, through the hinterland areas, through Charters Towers, out the back of Mackay, through the Whitsundays. Maybe a mix of coastal shower activity, maybe even some coastal thunderstorm activity, plus some afternoon boundary activity on the mountain ranges. We see widespread showers and thunderstorms out west. This is bad news, because we don't want any more rain out there. We do not want any. There's places in Queensland that do want rain, but these places are not it. They do not want rain, not a drop. Unfortunately, they're getting a fair bit. All right, as we go through Saturday night, once again, we see a redevelopment of heavy showers on the coast with the possibility of some thunderstorm activity. As we push into Saturday night, Sunday morning, once again, thin strip of heavy rain just off the coast of Cairns and then coming onto the coast in intermittent shower form all the way through down through the Townsville Mackay area. So very, very showery weekend for those folks. As we continue on into Sunday, we anticipate showers and thunderstorms in northwest Queensland are going to start slipping southeastwards down into central Queensland. We're going to see once again some redevelopment of showers and thunderstorms on and west of the ranges with the possibility of an isolated coastal cell as well. And then as we push into Sunday evening, into Sunday night, and Monday morning, we anticipate significant shower activity once again developing, this time more around the Burdekin Whitsundays area, plus lots of showers and storms, although they are starting to slip southeastwards here as we go through Monday. On Monday, we anticipate some showers and thunderstorms in the coastal hinterlands, so that's these areas in here, and depending on steering winds, they may or may not make it to the coast. We'll have a look at steering winds as we get closer to it. It's a little bit early to be looking at that for Monday. And then as we go into Tuesday, we're going to see a clearance for most of the district. However, there is a chance there that we maintain quite a bit of significant instability around the North Tropical Coast and the Herbert region. Total precipitation. Now, this is where we're going to differ in opinions because we're going to see some heavy rain still around Cooktown. This is rainfall between now and I'm just not going to take it out that far, folks. I just want to look at this system. I don't want to look at what's happening after it. So between now and when this system clears, we're anticipating widespread falls of in excess of 100 millimetres on the coastline. We're going to see some localised falls of 200 millimetres on the coastal ranges, some more than localised general falls around the Cooktown area of 200 plus, and we're going to see widespread heavy rainfall out through Georgie and out towards Normanton and Croydon and out down towards Richmond. So you can see there down towards Richmond we've got quite an extension of rainfall inland. The area between Greenvale, Charters, Towers is going back to the initial estimates, which is this area may see a little bit less rain than areas around it. But overall, no one misses out completely. Right, the HAFS model concurring with that assessment, you can see very heavy rain in the Daintree to Cooktown coastline and adjacent and also well inland, not just adjacent inland areas of the Cape. And we do see the development of shower activity this evening around the North Tropical Coast. As we get into tonight, overnight tonight, this is our first wave of showers. You can see it initially hitting the Whitsunday's Bowen area, and that happens around midnight, and then maybe Townsville an hour or two later. So this wave of showers is coming in from the northeast. We see heavy rainfall continue for Port Douglas to Cooktown. We see heavy rainfall extending west into the Cape. As we go through the overnight period, we see that first wave of showers come across this area all the way up and down the coastline. This first wave of showers shows us that we're changing our flow. And now all of this rain out here is about to come into us. All right, so all this stuff that's out there is going to come into us on Saturday and then on Sunday as well. All right, so that's Friday, by the way. Friday, Saturday and Sunday as well. As we go through Friday, we're going to see intermittent heavy showers. Intermittent. That means there's going to be breaks, there's going to be heavy bits. There's going to be breaks, there's going to be heavy bits, and you're going to go through that over and over and over again. That's happening on Friday. In the afternoon and evenings, we can see some heavy rainfall development, particularly on the ranges in the afternoons. And then as we go into the nighttime hours, we're going to see redevelopment. That's our thin strip. That's it there, all right? So it doesn't look that thin there, does it? That's our thin strip. That's all we've got to worry about up there in the Cairns district, because if that happens here, that's bad news for flash flood risk. But for now, that does look to be offshore. As we go into 1 a.m. and 4 a.m., we're watching that strip will come back towards the coast. So it's going to be offshore here, but angling back towards the coast because of the steering flow pattern. So we're watching for some very heavy potential rainfall in the Townsville, Ingham, Burdekin, Bowen, Whitsundays area at this point. That's Friday night, Saturday morning. Okay, so that's the area that we're really targeting with the possibility of very heavy rainfall, and we're watching that thin strip. You got to watch those thin strips, folks. I tell you, they're gonna be the difference one day between you getting 300 mils, waking up underwater with your car underwater, and waking up with a bit of drizzle. And you can see right there, that's a great example on the model. Thin strip, very heavy rainfall over a 2 to 3 hour period on Saturday. So that's a great example there of what we're talking about with those thin strips. All right, as we go through 4 p.m, 7 p.m, we see most of that activity on the ranges. But see this? This is what I'm worried about for the Townsville district, is the train line, the possibility of a train line of activity. That's a heavy rainstorm, followed by lighter rain, followed by another heavy rainstorm building in behind it, followed by lighter rain, followed by another heavy rainstorm building in behind it. Right, that's the concern for this area in the Tully, Ingham, Townsville, Burdekin, Bowen, Whitsundays, and west of Mackay, especially on the ranges west of Mackay. So that's our concern for those folks. So forget about wind. The concern is now just rainfall. Just make sure you don't forget about wind if you're a boater. You don't want to be going out on the water, of course. That's silly. But just understand that that's what we're dealing with here is the rainfall aspect of this system is the primary threat mechanism now after the next few hours. The next few hours, remember, we're still expecting very strong winds tonight. So you can see there, winds potentially gusting, especially in this deep convection around the Port Douglas Cooktown area. Winds could be gusting, especially offshore, up to around 40 to 50 knots. And those southeasterlies, before those easterlies come rip-roaring around, those southeasterlies near Townsville are packing a bit of a punch as well as down to Bowen, the Whitsundays, to a lesser extent down there. All right. Now, as the easterlies come in, you'll see the winds will actually ease off. See that? See how they've eased off? And then as we go through, we're going to start to see some squalls coming onto the coast, some squally showers. And with those squally showers, we're going to see winds increase again. And once again, you can see how difficult the models are struggling here because the system is so weak. And this is why we don't care about the centre so much, right? Because it's so weak. All the big wind is nowhere near the centre. Look at the biggest wind. It's about 200k away from the centre, right? So the centre doesn't matter anymore, all right? So I need to get that through people's heads. And we struggled with Koji because people just focused on the centre. It's like, don't worry about the centre. There's nothing to do with the centre. Centre's got nothing in it, all right? It's the areas around it that we need to focus on. So the real heavy rain threat, if we're targeting locations, the real heavy rain threat is those little localised pockets of extreme rain on the North Tropical Coast with those thin strips that we're talking about. For the Townsville, Ingham and Burdekin coastline and Bowen Whitsundays coastline, for this coastline, the real threat's happening probably around Saturday morning or Friday night into Saturday morning, where we get that thin strip developing off the FNQ coast, and then whatever's left of this low, this little blighter, as he pushes westwards, may just curve the flow into the coast. So instead of that thin strip staying offshore, the thin strip just becomes a thick mass of showers, thunderstorms and rain areas coming onto the coast. So that's the threat for this section of coastline. And that threat doesn't eventuate until Saturday, all right? Doesn't happen on Friday. That threat starts on Saturday. Now, there's no guarantee that threat will eventuate, and certainly no guarantee it'll eventuate into half a metre of rain in about a day, but there is some real potential there for heavy rainfall on this section of coastline, not necessarily just in Townsville, but on this section of coastline between the Tully area and down to the Whitsundays and inland of Mackay when this flow pattern shifts. Okay, so that's what we're looking for as we go through the back half of Saturday and even into some extent into Sunday. All right, if we take a look at wind accumulation, how bad could the winds get? Starting from around Prossie and the Whitsundays, about 35 knots should be about where we get to. Bowen around 30 to 35 knots, Ayr around 25 to 30, Townsville around 25 to 30, Palm Island about 40 knots for Palm. All right, so that's where we'll probably get to for Palm. So just be aware, there's some pretty strong winds there for Palm, especially in the next 6 to 12 hours. And then as we go further northwards, you can see Cardwell about 30 knots, Tully 25 to 30, and then Innisfail 30 to 35s. And then as we get out to the beaches, Mission and Wongaling and Tully Heads and Cowley Beach, these places might get 40 knots. All right, they might nudge that 40 knot range. Babinda, be careful. There's a bit of funneling going on here between the range on the coast and the range inland in that Babinda-Gordonvale area. So there'll be a bit of protection for some of you, and there'll be a bit of acceleration for some of you. And you can see that there in that region, getting up to a potentially 35 to 40 knots. So Cairns, we're sort of maxing around that 25 to 35 knot range. Green Island, different story, maxing out at around that 40, maybe even a touch more than that knots. Further northwards, the big thing we've got to worry about up here isn't the cyclone, it's the potential wind that comes out of the convective cells that are going to be operating through this region. All right, so the system itself probably not going to do too much, but it's the convective potential that's going to be there that is what creates the possibility of strong winds. Now, when we take a look at a high resolution version of this modelling, we do see, now just bear in mind that when we're talking about the high resolution modelling, it does over exaggerate things, but it also gives us an idea of downslope accelerated winds. All right, so you can see here coming down the mountainside out towards the Daintree, some very strong winds potentially out just out the back of Port Douglas, not Port Douglas itself because it's on the coast. Just out the back of Port Douglas, you can see some downslope accelerated winds. That happens also in the northern suburbs of Cairns, Palm Cove, Smithfield, these sort of areas. Edmonton, White Rock, those sort of areas out here in the southwestern edge of Cairns. Yeah, they're pretty susceptible to that. Now, for that to happen, we need the cyclone to hit the coast south of you, and that's what it's probably going to do. It's probably going to hit down here, right? So that makes those westerly winds, and it's the westerly winds that we're primarily talking about here, not necessarily the easterly winds, so don't let that direction fool you. The westerly winds coming down the mountain as the cyclone hits the coast, or the low hits the coast, whatever you want to call it. The other thing we're looking for is some pretty strong winds on the Atherton Tablelands. You can see there's places on the Atherton Tablelands that get some pretty strong wind gusts over the course of the next 24 to 36 hours. And as I talked about those beaches, 40 to 45 knots on those beaches is a possibility. Further southwards around Cardwell, you can see 30 to 35 knots there. They're a little bit more protected from the southeaster. And then once we get out towards Lucinda, Palm, Taylor's, Forest, all these areas, picking up those 35 to 45s. Townsville, once again, just peaking around 30s at this stage. There is potential there in some of the southern suburbs to see a little bit of funneling of the wind between Cape Cleveland and Mount Elliott, and also a bit of downslope acceleration in that new development area there. All right, so that's the expectation. Further southwards, we get out towards Alva, and we get some pretty significant sort of wind areas here out around Alva, about 35 to 40 knot gusts. And then once again, we head further down towards Bowen, and once again, we're maxing out at that 35 to 40 range for the Whitsundays as well, and the possibility of maybe a little bit of funneling going on here through into Conway Beach. All right. Outside of that, further southwards into the Mackay Whitsundays area, we're looking for once again mountain range driven winds or mountain range assisted winds that could get up to gusting up to about 30 to 40 knots. All right. So that's basically it. So winds are not your issue. Your issue is going to be how much rain do you get? And that issue will surface tomorrow, particularly tomorrow night and Saturday. That's where we'll figure it out how much rain you're going to get. But we need to be on the lookout for thin strips up here, and then we need to be on the lookout for the possibility of that thin strip being pulled into the coast due to the clockwise circulation flow that is present on the eastern side of this low, which would have weakened to a trough by tomorrow night. All right, that covers everything we need to cover for all of North Queensland, from Mackay to Cooktown at this point in time for this system's landfall, and especially important for the system beyond landfall. So tonight, all eyes on the Cooktown Daintree coastline. Be aware of new showers starting to pop up further southwards though, and our first wave of shower activity coming in around midnight or just before midnight here, and then just after midnight through the rest of the region. Have a wonderful night. We'll talk again in the morning if you're a subscriber. If you're not, consider subscribing. Otherwise, I'll talk to you again in 2 nights' time, where our focus will be southeast Queensland and southern central Queensland. Good.
All right, so that was the specific forecast we sent out to our members for the Cooktown to Mackay and inland through North Queensland area. So hopefully that was comprehensive enough for you to understand. This next one is another 20-minute burst of a forecast looking at what happens to the system after it crosses the coast and then potentially starts moving southeast. So the first 15 minutes of this one is going to be on this system again, a little bit more technical, a little bit more jargon, and then 5 minutes we'll spend on the NT system, and then 2 minutes we'll spend on the WA system, and then I'll open it up to questions. Okay, so hopefully you got a fair bit out of that one, and let's go.
G'day folks, welcome to an North Oz Tropics Watch forecast. Today the 5th of the 3rd, 2026. This update brought to you by TownsvilleSheds.com. Welcome also to all our non-members who are watching this on our live broadcast, or watching a replay of this on our live broadcast. Hopefully it answers some of the more technical questions you may have about the systems here. Alright, our low pressure system firstly is currently located just on the eastern edge of that deep convection. So if we put the ruler out and we figure it out, it's around about 200 k's to the east-northeast of Cairns, and from Townsville it's around about 310, 320 k's to the north-northeast of Townsville. All right, the system is moving in almost a westerly direction today, and it's expected to slow down overnight tonight as it consolidates its multiple circulation centres and then begin adopting a further southwestward motion to the coast. Now, as it consolidates its circulation centres, there is a chance there that it ducks southwards, and that's in response to a deep layer steering flow that begins to change to a slightly more south-southwest type direction to the east of the circulation. Now, we have seen, as I mentioned, the system has been moving in this westerly direction, so if we just use the computer models that have got that right, and there's not many of them that have got it right, but it's these ones here that have got it right, or close to right. So we'll use those, and you can see what they're doing. So, generally speaking, we've got two schools of thought here. We've got a school of thought that says, all right, the system gets to the coast as a system as we get into probably about tomorrow morning. Now, there's another school of thought that says, well, if we don't get to the coast tomorrow morning, there might be a bit more of a southerly turn. So the ones that turn south are the ones that stay offshore a bit longer. And you can see there, the ones that turn south are the ones that hit a little bit further south around the Tully-Ingham area. All right, so there is a fair bit of doubt about where the system goes. The good thing about that doubt, and we don't like seeing doubt, but the great thing about it is it doesn't matter, because the system is so weak that it really doesn't matter. It can hit Cairns, it can hit Townsville, it can hit Ingham, it can hit Innisfail, and no one will care. We don't get that sort of confusion 6 to 12 hours away from a landfall when we've got a strong system. When we've got a strong system, we know exactly how it's going to interact with the coast, we know how it's moving, etc. When we've got this sort of weak rubbish with multiple circulation centres, it can do unpredictable things. But the good part about that is we don't care. Sorry to put it that bluntly, but we really don't care. And the reason we don't care is because we're not going to find a lot of the strongest weather around the circulation. Now, why has the system not intensified, and why has the system cut off into two circulations throughout the last couple of days? Well, basically this upper level trough, this tut that we talked about the other day. You can see the upper trough located east of Weipa. All right, so that's our upper trough, and that's taking all of the convection and shearing it away to the west. All right, so that's what we call easterly wind shear. And it's taking all the tops of these storms and bringing them onto the coast out towards Cooktown and the Daintree and just north of Cairns. But it's not assisting the cyclone in development one little bit. It's actually making life extremely difficult. Nigh on impossible. Tropical cyclone shear magnitude indicating also very significant easterly shear over the top of the circulation this afternoon into this evening. There's been very significant shear for the last 24 hours. The good news there is, well, good news. The news there is that we do get better shear profiles south of Cairns, but we're going to have to wait till tomorrow to see that. And by that stage, the system's just it's either on the coast or it's too close to the coast, and it's suffering from land interaction anyway. So it's a bit of a moot point. And as I say, this is why we don't really care. The structure is rubbish. Its prospects are rubbish, and the weather right around the circulation will be rubbish as well. So there's no real point in further analysis of this system. What I do want to analyse is what's going to happen after this rubbish hits the coast. This is where our focus needs to be. So we know it's going to hit the coast. We know it's going to move in this southwest direction to the coast. And if it doesn't hit by the morning, then it'll probably move a bit more southerly and hit down here. It doesn't matter because it doesn't produce any major weather around the circulation centre. So as we go through into Friday night and Saturday, we're watching the upper level system. Now, there's an upper level ridge now around Willis Island. By the way, see how that tut's just gone, just vanished? So there it is there, and just vanishes at one stage through the back end of tomorrow. So it just moves westwards and then just dies. So that's the end of our tut. So as we go through, we're then moving in a south to south-southeast direction on Saturday night as we maintain or develop a surface trough through the inland areas on the western periphery of this ridge that's located over Willis Island. So that's going to drive whatever's here towards the southeast. And that's why when we take a look at our MSLP precip, we have so much rain and storm activity in Western Queensland and northwestern Queensland, because our tut moves west on Friday, and then on Saturday our tut dies, but in its wake we've got a very strong surface trough developing through this region, and that continues to create showers and thunderstorms. Now, on its own, that's not going to concern us. That's just going to create lots of showers and thunderstorms, and eventually those showers and thunderstorms will clear the coast. But what concerns us then is that at the 300 hectopascal level on Sunday, watch what's happening over Western Queensland. See this little kink? Right, so that little kink creates an upper level trough. That mid-latitude upper level trough amplifies northwards, i.e. strengthens northwards. As it strengthens northwards, it helps to induce and create low pressure system development at the surface. That's an important component. On the northeastern side of these little suckers, they help to enhance rotation at the surface. Now, if there's already pre-existing rotation at the surface, what they're going to do is further intensify that pre-existing rotation. So where our focus lies is, we know that this cyclone is going to go west into the coast, so hit the coast, then go west, all right, then it's going to go southeast. Now, what we don't know is, does it wash out into a trough, and are we looking at a brand new low that develops here, or are we looking at this being the dominant system all the way through? Now, there's a big difference in rainfall in the two scenarios. This system dominates all the way through. We're going to see some really big rainfall through southern, central and possibly southeast Queensland. Now, if this system doesn't manage to pull through all the way to the coast, and we see a brand new system forming off the coast, it decreases our rainfall significantly in southern central Queensland, and also decreases quite a bit of rain through that emerald area. So this setup is the most potent one for rainfall, the one you're seeing on your screen here, where our cyclone hits the coast up around Cairns, and then comes westwards, and then comes southeastwards, but stays as its own man. It stays its own system, all right? It doesn't completely wash out into a trough. It looks like it might for a few hours, but then the upper trough helps to redevelop it. And you can see it here. It's actually intensifying over land. It starts to tighten up over land. And that is due to the upper trough inducing cyclogenesis at the surface. Now, at this point here, where the system washes out and then starts to retighten, that's the point it becomes non-tropical. All right, because now it feeds off the energy of the upper level system, not the energy of the ocean. All right, not the energy of its heat engine. So it's now no longer a heat engine system. All right, so from here it becomes a subtropical system, and that subtropical system starts to really intensify as it gets closer and closer to the coast. But notice the intensification starts over land. Tropical cyclones don't do that. All right, tropical cyclones don't intensify over land. This one intensifies over land. The reason it intensifies over land is due to that upper level cold air that's coming in behind it. And you see that system then ducks off to off southeast Queensland and out to the graveyard. All right. Longer term, what are we expecting? We're anticipating the southeasterly flow to come up the coastline, dry us out for a little bit, but get up to about North Queensland and continue to drive a bit of convergence up there. So there's potential there for further heavy falls in North Queensland as we go through the back from about midweek next week into the back half of next week. The monsoon doesn't completely die, so the monsoon, while weak, isn't completely dead. Longer term, we're anticipating another low coming west from the Solomon Islands, and we're also anticipating that that low will push into the northern Coral Sea. Some of the models then have that low hitting the coast up here. Some of the models have that low recurving out to sea. It's far too early to speculate. Anyone that is trying to tell you what they know what's going to happen with this low is bullshitting you. But understand that there is another low pressure signal coming west from the Coral Sea, from the Solomon Islands, as we go out to about day 9, day 10 onwards of the forecast. It's still a long way away, and we know that the upper pattern is not going to be very simple. We know that what we can see at the moment, early piece, we can see that at the 300 hectopascal level, it looks pretty hunky-dory there, that the system just comes straight into the coast, right? But here's where it gets tricky. If the system slows down at any stage, an upper trough starts to amplify around the back end of, not this week, next week. And so that will Sorry, not next week, the week after, and that will take whatever's out here and bring it out towards the bring it out towards the graveyard. So there's a lot of doubt. The faster this thing moves, the more likely it'll hit the coast. The slower this thing moves, the more likely it'll recurve away from the coast. Right? If we're going to put it in a nutshell, that's what we'd be looking for in this next one. Nothing to be concerned about. Just understand that there is another low pressure signal coming west from the Coral Sea. Anyone that tells you they know what's going to happen with it, bullshitting you. Right, so rainfall, just without that next convergence zone in North Queensland, without that low, and just looking at this system, you can see there's some pretty significant rainfall expectations here. Now, the problem I've got with the modelling is that we don't know where the cutoff in southeast Queensland is. We don't know if this real heavy rain area between Brisbane and the Fraser Coast is going to be there, or if it's going to be here between Bundy or Maryborough and Rocky. Right, we don't know where that real heavy rain area is going to be as this system tracks southeast, and then we don't know whether or not we're going to get an east coast low that forms off the coast, or whether we're going to get our cyclone low, our tropical low, that comes in and stays its own man the whole time. And there's a fair difference in rainfall there between the setup that I just showed you and the setup that has a low off the coast. The low off the coast is going to take our rainfall and divide it by at least 2, maybe 3 in terms of the numbers we'll get. But something like the thing that I just showed you might actually give us bigger numbers than what's being reflected here. So there's a lot of doubt, folks, about how this process works. And it makes sense that there's doubt. I'd be concerned if there wasn't doubt. There's a lot of complexity in that whole change between tropical to subtropical, whether or not we maintain the low or whether we wash it out into a trough. Do we then look for a new low somewhere out here? No, there's a lot of complexity there. There's a lot of moving parts. And as I say, I'd be pretty concerned if all the models were telling us the same thing, because I'd be worried that they would have missed something by doing that. And that's an important component. You can see there that we've got all sorts of variable solutions about rainfall between now and Tuesday morning. The key here is that they're all predicting that whatever mess is happening here, it's really peaking in intensity Sunday night, Monday morning. And the good thing about that is we got a bit of time to figure it all out. Okay, we got a bit of time. We don't need to start jumping the gun and talking 300 mils for you and 500 mils for you and 5 mils for you. We don't have to jump the gun and do that. We've got plenty of time to figure it out as things start to develop, as we start to see what happens with this low. Does it maintain a bit of shape as it moves west? Does it wash out into a trough straight away? You know, those questions are important, because that dictates how it operates through the inland. When does it start intensifying? Does it intensify at all? I mean, if it's just a trough, it won't intensify at all. Then we're looking for a new low developing, all right? And then that takes a fair bit of rain away, all right? So that's the sort of stuff we're dealing with on Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Firstly, let's get the thing on the bloody coast, because that's already causing headaches between Port Douglas and Ingham. So let's get it on the coast. Then let's figure out how strong it stays as it moves inland. Does it maintain its circulation? Does it weaken completely to a trough? And then we can start speculating about who gets rain, when rain, where rain, how much wind, okay? And as I say, don't worry about the second system coming in from the Solomons at this stage. We'll worry about it if we need to later on down the track. For the record, our hybrid model also does the same thing. Brings the thing onto the coast around Cairns, takes the thing inland, and keeps the circulation going. Just enough and just strong enough that the upper trough can come in and reinvigorate it. See how as the upper trough comes in, have a look at these winds that start to spark up around the Mackay-Rocky coastline. That's a real telltale sign that the upper trough is doing its thing and helping that cyclogenesis happen. And you can see then as we go into Monday, the system quickly exits the coastline off southeast Queensland and dries us all out very, very quickly. All right, so that's the expectation there. But as I say, there's some nuance to it all. All right, so for those of you that are subscribers, make sure you're tuning into your southern and central Queensland forecasts to make sure that you're very alert about what the latest is with that system as we get more information and more confidence in the forecast, but it's too early right now to be confident in it. Right, we're getting a little bit more clarity about the Northern Territory system. That Northern Territory system hit the coast this morning. It's tracking west towards Katherine. Expected to track sort of between Katherine and probably Jabiru, would be my guess in terms of where it goes. And then it'll start moving in a more westerly direction, exiting the coast between Port Keats and Darwin. This is important. This part here is very important for the top end, because if it doesn't exit the coast, Darwin just gets pummeled and pummeled and pummeled, and so too does the western top end coast, and it doesn't stop. But we do expect, and this is been the big change here, we do expect the system to get off the coast. Now, as it gets off the coast, it does show some cyclone potential, but it might run out of time and run into the coast in the Kimberley. So you can see there the system then on Tuesday comes into the Kimberley, nudges that section of coastline, and then starts to head out towards the Kimberley coast. Now, we're not sure with the longer term aspect of this system whether or not it's able to continue tracking west or whether it'll start dipping south. So this is definitely a watch system. Nothing to do more than that right now, but it is a watch system, because initially the estimates had it just sitting over the top end. Then the estimates just had it scooting away to the west. Yesterday, we went back to just sitting in the top end. Today, we've come in with a mid-range solution where it starts moving to the west, slows down, and then comes south. So there's a lot of variability here about what this thing does longer term, but we're a bit more confident that it's not going to be cataclysmic rainfall for the western top end, because we are expecting it to get off the coast. Let's have a look at why. Right, so we're seeing some pretty strong easterly steer. The same easterly steer that's driving the Coral Sea cyclone in is driving this cyclone west. So the idea is that fairly strong steering profile is maintained. Now, the monsoon is trying to counterbalance that. Now, you can see the monsoon steer, which is trying to drag the cyclone back out here, and the mid-level ridge steer, which is trying to drag the cyclone here. So the idea is the mid-level ridge steer, you can see, is stronger than the monsoon steer. And because we're not reinforcing the monsoon at any stage, it's the mid-level steer from the south that becomes the dominant part of this forecast. So as we go through Saturday, we can see the system actually gets off the coast. That's important because that changes the rainfall forecast significantly for the western top end. It means that they're going to see a truck ton of rain on the way in, and then things are going to settle down. And then it also introduces cyclone risk. Because we see an east-west motion of the system, you can see there no real monsoonal pressure to come back at the coast. So at this stage, the system should be ducking off to the west. Now, the problem we have is right here. This is the problem. Tuesday. See how we lose our mid-level ridge? We develop an upper-level trough. See that trough there? So that is going to try and stop the system from moving further westward. Now, we don't know how strong that trough's going to be just yet. Now, if it's not strong enough, the system then resumes a westerly track. If it is strong, and it's strong enough to erode the ridge and extends northwards enough, or amplifies northwards enough, we may see a system that comes back at the coastline, or just sort of continues to nudge the coastline. So it is quite a tricky setup here. One of the things we do see is that the dynamics out here weaken. So at the moment, one of the things we've got out here is a combination of strong steer from the south, but we've also got a reasonable monsoon. Now, the monsoon is going to decay over the course of the next week or so. So the longer this stuff's around and doesn't really decide what it wants to do and doesn't really pull itself together, the less chance it ever has of doing so. And so a lot of our modelling is telling us that, sure, there is a chance it gets offshore now, but they don't really want to do much with it. All right, so they don't really want to develop it any stronger, and they just sort of keep it in and around the place and just keep it stuffing around like a bad smell. And that's what we're seeing evidence of in more and more models, is we push it west far enough to stop Darwin from getting a cataclysmic flood, but we don't push it west far enough to go out into the ocean and say bye-bye, see you later, never to talk about again. So we've got a system that just sort of in the doldrums. It's just not really doing much, but it's just exciting the atmosphere enough for widespread heavy rainfall. Total accumulated precip does vary model to model, but you can see some really heavy precip there over the course of the next week, week and a half, while the thing just mucks around and stuffs around. And you can see the same thing here on the GFS AI model. So the big thing here is going to be, can it get off the coast? If it gets off the coast, a lot of this heavier stuff will get off the coast with it. But if it stays on the coast, so if we can't get it off the coast to start with, because it's going to start stuffing around, that's a problem. That's going to be a major, major flood problem for the western half of the top end. So that's something we need to pay attention to. Now, these systems are notoriously difficult to predict because they tend to be somewhere between a strong steering mechanism and another strong steering mechanism, and they don't tend to get dominated by one or the other. That's why we may see a system that goes west, then stalls, then starts drifting around aimlessly. The other thing we're going to see is a lot of dry air coming up from the south, and that's going to interact with the circulation. So we're going to see some spectacular thunderstorms and spectacular convergence zones on the western side of this thing. Now, we're only getting a little sneak peek right now in the radar of what's going to happen here, and around the Port Keats or just north of Port Keats area. So fingers crossed that stays in a fairly, what would be the word, fairly sparsely populated area. All right, quickly moving out to the west, let's have a quick look here in the southeast Indian Ocean. When I find it, there we go. Southeast Indian Ocean. Now, what do we got out here? We got a low pressure system tracking eastwards. There it is there. We've got a low pressure system tracking westwards. There it is there. Both of them are struggling with a bit of wind shear. Both of them are struggling because they're impacting each other. So they're not able to create very significant convection around them due to wind shear, and they're both hampering each other's development. If we take a look at what both of these are going to do, rightio, pretty clear-cut evidence of what these are going to do. I don't think we need to spend too much time on them because they're not going to affect the coastline directly, right? So this one out here off the coast of Headland is going to push to the west. This one out here off Christmas Island is going to push to the east, slow down, decay off the coastline. Now, that's really, really important, decay off the coastline. Let's have a look at any weather effects that this decaying process may have on the northwest WA coast. Right, so the first thing is the blowy winds around Port Hedland due to the expansion of the wind field. We talked about this a couple of nights ago, so no need to rehash that. Now, the system's wind field begins to contract a little. You can see the system getting quite strong there on its southwestern flank, but you also notice the system on the northeastern side or northern side up until this point was struggling. Now, as we continue, the system continues tracking west. There's our decay, right? That's our decaying system. As it gets, you can see how close it gets to the coast. That's why the error margin from the bomb extended to the coast, right? So you can see how close that decaying process gets, that decaying system gets onto the coast or gets close to the coast, and then the decayed system dies. All right, so the idea is total accumulated precip. We may see some showers developing on that southwestern part of the Kimberley around the Dampier Peninsula. All right, so we can see there a bit of shower activity today, and then that decaying process where the system just dies on your doorstep may result in an isolated shower or storm through the region. There it is there, okay? So that decaying process happens over the course of the weekend. Through Sunday, we expect the system to die. But on that Sunday, as it dies, period of some shower activity there. Now, we can still see some shower activity being forced by this low pressure system as it tracks fairly rapidly to the west. And I suspect that if and when the system is able to get this deep convection over the top of the circulation, it won't be long before it can be a tropical cyclone, I wouldn't imagine. Let's have a look at what the Bureau are saying there on their forecast. No, they've got it just staying as a low. All right, that's fair enough. They don't expect it to consolidate under the circulation centre. All right, so that's that one. And as I say, with that second one, just be aware of that decaying process, getting mighty close to the coast in the Kimberley on Sunday. Enjoy your night.
Alrighty, thanks for watching that, folks. As I said, that's a really good sneak peek at what you get for your $32.95 a year, or your $69.95 a year if you also get involved with our weather centre as well. But $32.95 a year goes a long way to supporting us, and if you like that sort of content, you get that sort of content every day. So very comprehensive. I've obviously got a lot of questions here, so I'll go through those as we go. But if I've already answered some of those questions, questions inside that video, I won't answer them here, just in the interest of saving my voice. But there might have been things there I didn't cover that you're very interested in. All right, so let me find what's happening with our stream chat. I've just got to find our stream chat. All right. Where's it hitting Nitzo, says Melly. No, see, that's the sort of question I'm not going to answer because we've already seen where I think it's hitting with all of them. Hey, Nitzo, how much rainfall is expecting to fall in the Whitsundays between Bowen to Mackay South for Friday to Sunday on the weekend? Yeah, so that's a question we did answer, but let's rehash that question and let's answer it again. From Jesse, we'll go into Bowen and we'll have a look here. So total accumulated rainfall between now and Sunday. Now, this is going to vary wildly depending on which model we're using. But generally speaking, we do anticipate for that entire region that we're going to see 100 plus millimetres, right? So for that entire Whitsundays region during that time. And I think we're seeing pretty good evidence in almost all guidance that we'll see 100. Certainly on any of the ranges in the region, we're going to see well and truly over 100 mils between now and Sunday. I think on the coast, there might be little patches of the coast that might get less than that, but generally speaking, 100 seems to be a safe bet. Maybe up to 200 or so especially if we get some train lines of that activity that we talked about. The Access C North Queensland, just the latest one that's coming out here, is telling us to expect maybe up to 50 to 100 millimetres already by Saturday morning. So it does have, the big thing to understand here is we do have really big rain potential here, but that's all it is right now. It's big rain potential. We need to see some type of train line of activity. Otherwise, we're just going to get heavy showers that'll come in and drive 10, 20 millimetres each time. Then we'll get some lighter activity or a bit of a break in activity and then heavy showers again. So it's really important to understand the sort of rainfall that we're getting here. It's not a widespread rain area. It's a pull back towards the coastline of intermittent showers. And that applies for everyone from sort of Tully down through to basically St. Lawrence. So we can see that as evidence there. So the Access C North Queensland gives us a really good idea at how things will start to operate through here. So what we can see is if we go through, this is our first wave of showers tonight. So you can see overnight tonight, you can actually see them on the radar there. You can start to make out that first wave already. And then as we go through, we can see that there's intermittent heavy, these red showers coming onto the coast. But you'll notice there's big breaks between the red showers, right? So there's big breaks. It's not a constant. Now, this is what we've got to be careful of. And this is the big thing that we've got to be careful of in this entire region is this. See this around Townsville? That opportunity as we go into Saturday morning. See how we develop this northerly flow and we start bringing it onto the coast, and then we begin developing further heavy falls behind it, and so it becomes a train line of activity. And that's the thing that is going to be the big risk factor for this section of coastline. And usually the risk starts around Ingham, traditionally starts around Ingham and ends around the northern parts of Mackay. That usually tends to be the area of greatest potential for that. So sorry, I'm just getting a few dings. And so the greatest potential for that to happen is going to be from tomorrow night, Saturday morning, continuing through Saturday and into Sunday. So if you get one of those train lines, you can easily pick up 100 to 200 millimetres in the space of about 12 hours. Okay, so very intense rainfall potential in those, but it's just a matter of, are they going to happen? And we think there will probably be at least one or two spots here that'll see that train line, but where are they going to happen? That's so difficult to forecast. All right. So generally speaking, everyone should be picking up 50 minimum, 100 probable, 150 possible. And then if you're getting one of these train lines, you'll start to see 200s and possibly 300s. Okay, that's the big threat that we're seeing in, for example, the UK Met model, which is pretty on the ball when it comes to this sort of stuff. Usually what it does is it gets the spots wrong, but it doesn't really get the amounts wrong. And so what happens here is we can see there the possibility of some really intense rainfall potential in that train line activity, right? So it's one of those situations here where we just need to have our wits about us and understand that that's a possibility on this section of coastline, and that extends to the Whitsundays. So there's no guarantee that's going to be there. As I said, the model doesn't get the position right, but it usually gets the amounts pretty close. All right, so that might not be here, it might be here. Where that train line happens is too difficult to know yet, all right, but it is a real possibility, and there is going to be some real threat of extreme rainfall on this section of coastline in that northerly flow, especially if we get one of those train lines happening. All right, so at the moment, in answer to your question, going back to the Whitsundays, about 100 mils would be my guess, but you get one of those train lines and we can easily triple that, okay? All right. Leone, I think he's replaying. His mouth isn't moving. Yes, I was definitely replaying. Otherwise, I'm really talented. If I can do that without my mouth moving, I'm extremely talented. And I'm not that talented, sorry. It's crazy in Yarrabah, very strong winds and the sound is so wild. Yeah, tonight, absolutely. Yarrabah's strongest winds will be tonight. And so too will most of that northeast coast away from the downslope acceleration stuff we talked about in the video. But tonight, absolutely, Yarrabah in for a shellacking. And we go back up to that Cairns area. We won't just look at Yarrabah, we'll look at Cairns just for the night. And the UK Met's just coming out, I think. All right, let's have a look. Yeah, you can definitely see that where the circulation is on that southwestern side, you've got winds gusting up to about 40 to 45 knots. And because Yarrabah sticks out, that south-southeasterly is whacking Yarrabah hard at the moment on that southwestern side of the circulation. And you can see there into tonight, we do start to see winds easing overnight. So you can see that. And then we turn them more easterly. And we're just this is brand new model data. So it's just coming out now. So it hasn't got the system quite at landfall yet, but it is approaching the Cairns coastline. And this is one of the reasons why I made a big point of saying we don't give a shit about the centre of circulation, because you can see it's not the centre of circulation that's creating the big wind. All right, you can see our wind is displaced a fair way on the eastern side, and tonight you're getting most of your wind tonight, right? So once the centre gets to you, there's not going to be that much wind about it. And so that's why I make a big song and dance about folks not focusing on the centre. All right. Michael Beasley, steam trains. Yes, like that. It's going to be hooting and hollering out there. Yeah, sure is, Matt. Matt, thanks, Nitzo. No worries, thanks, Matt. So a repeat of ex-tropical cyclone Sid as a rain depression. He dropped a shitload of heavy rainfall. This is Tanya. All day Friday into Friday night until it moved on to Ingham and Townsville. Back in mid-late January 98, Tully got major flooding the night into early hours of Saturday morning. Townsville got it Saturday night. They call it the Night of Noah. Oh, yeah, that was Night of Noah. Ex-Cyclone Sid. Yeah, I remember that one. I was a young fella then. Maybe not quite as potent as the Sid situation, Tanya, but I see what you mean. And if this was a bit stronger, because Cyclone Sid was actually a reasonably strong system, this is a really poorly put together system. So I don't know if we can be comparing the systems, but the mechanisms of action are quite similar that we had with Sid and that we're having with this. It's just that this is on a completely different level of intensity, like a much lower level of intensity. Right, Anurin, the question I have is, where's my T-shirt, Nitso? Please. We don't have T-shirts. Weather IQ doesn't do T-shirts. Sorry. Suzette, you can have a singlet. Do you want a singlet? We might do a singlet, just because I wear singlets all the time. Or whatever these are. What are these called? Muscle tops or whatever they're called. Weak. Suzette says weak. Yes, Suzette, this is very weak. I know it doesn't feel that way if you're on the ground, but let's be honest, this isn't cyclonic. Yeah. So no matter what you're feeling right now, and I don't want to, not validate your feelings, but just understand that what you're seeing on your screen is very weak. All right. It feels strong on the ground. Absolutely. 30 to 40 knots, gusts getting up to 40 to 50 potentially just offshore. Does it feel strong? Absolutely. Is it anywhere near what we'd expect in a cyclone? Maybe at its strongest possibility, it's right on the threshold of the weakest possible cyclone. Okay, so yeah, mate, in this setup, yeah, we're calling it weak. Okay. Anurin, I remember when the systems developed around Willis Island, they used to pump. Yeah, so do we. Haven't seen those days for 10 years. Haven't seen them since Cyclone Debbie. In 2017, I think, was Debbie. Starry Night says, love your work, Nitso. Thanks, Starry Night. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for watching. Looking forward to some rain in Gladdy. Yes, Michael. Actually, we haven't talked about Gladdy. Let's have a look at Gladdy. Good call. I think no matter which way we go here, Gladstone's getting a bit of rain. All right, so that's not Gladstone, Nitso. What are you doing there? All right, so no matter what we're doing, Gladstone's getting a bit of rain. Now, not necessarily tonight, but they're going to get a bit of rain out of this, all right? And by a bit, we're sort of minimum thinking 100s, all right? So we're thinking minimum in that sort of ballpark. We're thinking maximums could be a bit higher depending on exactly how the East Coast low process works here. So just quickly for this central Queensland zone, look, today we're not going to see nothing tonight. Don't worry about that. But as we go into tomorrow, we'll start to see showers coming in. Yeah, there they are. Some heavy little showers coming in as the day goes on, and we change our flow. And then the first half of Saturday, we'll start to see some further heavy rainfall streaming southwards. And then it's not until Sunday that we expect to see things go a little bit skits out here. All right, so as we get into Friday, we see those showers starting to come in. Saturday, we see quite a bit of rain through the region. And then Sunday is when we start to see the real deal. All right, so Sunday and then into Monday, that last little bit before the clearance, that's when we see the real rain. But is the real rain over Gladstone, or is the real rain a little further south? That's the part we don't know, mate. So you can see in that setup where all the real rain is a bit further south, right? So for Gladstone, even in this setup where all the real rain's a bit further south, you're still getting over 100 mils. You're getting closer to 200. All right, so it's not a case of, are we going to get rain? You're going to get rain. What level of rain are you going to get? All right, that's where we're at the moment for Gladstone. For Brisbane, we're still umming and ahhing about whether you're going to get rain. Right, for Brisbane, it's a different topic of conversation there. For Brisbane, it's how far south will this develop? Because if it develops up here around between Gladstone and Bundy, Brisbane will get a shower. That'll be it. So for Brisbane, the stakes are way higher. For you, it's a case of, are you going to get 100, are you going to get 200, or are you going to get 300? For Brisbane, it's a case of, are you going to get 300, or are you going to get 5? Right, so that's the difference we've got in the predictability for Brisbane versus the predictability for Gladdy. All right, so I just want to draw your attention there. Yous aren't equal here. The southern cutoff here could be very sharp in that rainfall. The northern cutoff won't be. All right, the northern cutoff will see significant rain throughout the Capricornia and the Wide Bay region. But the southern cutoff could be quite violent, could be quite sharp. So I hope I've explained that one well for you. Jackie says, thanks, Nitso. Thanks, Jackie. Thanks for watching. Andrew, hey, Nitso, any chance your middle name is Zeus after the Greek god of lightning and thunder? Nah, man. Nah, no chance. I wouldn't mind looking like a bloody Greek statue, though. Jeez, maybe not the private parts, because they're usually very small on the Greek statues, but the rest of it, they look like very healthy specimens. Sounds good. It's a replay of his last report. Yes, Maureen, it is. It's a replay of my report this evening. Hi, Nitso from Ball Bay. I'm not sure where that is. Susan, brand new subscriber. That's awesome. Love your work. Thank you. Thanks, Susan. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget, folks, weatheriq.com.au/subscribe. That link's up there for a reason. If you'd like to support us, head over there. Become an iWall Basic member. You'll get all these forecasts. So very easy to understand what you're seeing. Right. Bloody very wet at Wonga Beach. Definitely got flooding. Yeah, if we go back to, let's see what's happened in Wonga Beach in the last, let's go to radar rainfall. And let's have a look at what's been happening just in the last hour or so. Yeah, well, Wonga Beach doesn't look like it's been the worst affected in the last hour or so, but we're certainly seeing falls in excess of 30 millimetres in the last hour through the Daintree, definitely creating some flash flood risk, no doubt. And obviously since 9 a.m, Wonga Beach has seen a lot of rain, and you can see their radar-derived rainfalls are very, very significant. And yeah, it's been... Yeah, we've only got the last 24 hours. Actually, let's have a look at rolling rainfall. Yeah, so rolling rainfall indicates the rainfall just in the last... yeah, so you can see just inland of Wonga Beach has been where the biggest stuff is. Maureen asks, where's Wonga Beach? Wonga Beach is... Oh, correct me if I'm wrong. It's around between Mossman and the Daintree. It's in here, I think. I think it's in there. Somewhere in there is Wonga Beach. Probably closer to the Daintree than Mossman, if I... might be... No, it might be midway. Anyway, I think that's where Wonga Beach is, but I could be wrong. I've only been there once. Paul, when is this rain going to stop? Well, that depends on where you are, Paul. As we talked about in the forecast, the rain stops for the state Monday night, but some parts of the state will stop on Sunday night. Some parts of the state will stop on Monday morning, and most of the state will stop on Monday night. Okay, so hopefully that answers your question. I can't answer it better than that unless you tell me where you're from, mate. Christina, what should we expect here on the southern Gold Coast? I'm loving this rain. Yeah, probably a little bit too far south, Christina. So let's have a look at the Gold Coast. So the Gold Coast is going to be in a situation where we don't expect the northerlies from the tropics to get to you. So firstly for the Gold Coast, let's talk about tomorrow, because tomorrow we're going to see quite a bit of shower activity on the Gold Coast. I think we've already started to see that tonight. Yeah, there it is there. So you can start to see that's developed tonight. We're going to see a lot of shower activity through the Gold Coast tomorrow as well. So you can see that reflected in the forecast chart here for Friday. Yeah, so lots and lots of shower activity for the Gold Coast tomorrow. Lots and lots of shower activity throughout southeast Queensland tomorrow with some moderate to heavy falls. So that's the expectation tomorrow. But I think what you're referring to is what can I expect, you know, from this cyclone once it decides to do what it does and it changes its structure? And the answer probably for the Gold Coast isn't a hell of a lot. So when we see the really intense rainfall development, most of the guidance is telling us it's going to be north of Brizzy, and there's going to be a fair rain gradient to the south. So that means that you're not going to see a lot of rain south of where that cutoff is going to be. You're going to see a fair bit of shower activity because you're on the Gold Coast, and because we expect to see southeasterly winds on the south side of that circulation, you're going to see quite a bit of rainfall just from southeasterly winds and stream showers. All right, but from a heavy rain perspective, where we're getting that real intensity of rainfall, probably not in the Gold Coast. All right, so in the Gold Coast, it's going to be all about getting the showers from the southeasterlies on the south side of our circulation, which is expected to develop well north of the Gold Coast. All right, so we're expecting that to develop around the Fraser Coast, maybe the Wide Bay Coast, maybe even the southern Capricornia Coast, although that might be a little bit too far north. So we're expecting it to develop sort of between Maroochydore and, you know, Gladstone. So somewhere in there is where we expect the circulation to form. And so Gold Coast is going to be on the south side of that, and probably just far enough south that you're not in the main convergence band that develops as well. So lots of shower activity, and it's going to keep you nice and cool. It's going to feel refreshing for sure. But at this stage, probably not a major problem for the Gold Coast away from the shower activity. Okay. Bron, hi Chris, thanks for the update. No worries, Bron, thanks for joining us. Tony, thanks legend. Thanks Tony, thanks for joining us. Internet access is being a pain, says BJ. Well, BJ, the good news is you can replay this whenever you like once it's uploaded. So once I finish gibbering, it uploads on its own, and within about half an hour or an hour it's available to you to replay, so whenever you watched. Jackie, I've read anything from 50 to 400 for the Fraser Coast. Yep, that about sums it up. 50, you'd be pretty unlucky 50 on the Fraser Coast, but yeah, 400 probably on the really, really high end. somewhere in between that is definitely what I'd be looking for, around that 1-200 range. But really important to understand is that as we get to this stage, let me just see if we've got a model that shows it, because I need to show you this, because it is important that we're very aware that this last bit, before the whole thing, before this whole mess clears off, this last little 6 to 12 hour period could be really lethal for intensity of rainfall, especially in the scenario that we talked about where the cyclone in the Coral Sea, the tropical system, stays as a recognisable circulation. That makes life very, very interesting as we get to a situation where here, we don't have it. No, we don't really have a great model to show what my concern would be in this section. So there's going to be a period here as we go into Monday and we push this. Maybe this will be a good example. So just here, as we go into Sunday night and Monday morning, when we're first developing the circulation, or we're bringing that circulation quickly to the coast, there's this period just on the southern edge, just on the south side of where the circulation's forming, that we could see some really heavy rain. You're seeing evidence of that there, 50 to 60 mils over 3 hours, 50 to 60 mils in the same spot over 3 hours. That's 100 mils over 6 hours. And then there's another 50 potential in the next 3 hours. That's 150 mils over 9 hours, right? So that's the part there. So that's actually a good example. Now, what we don't know, just like we don't know for the Townsville district, we don't know where that spot's going to be, right? We don't know if that spot's going to be over Gympie. We don't know if it's going to be over Maryborough. Might be over Bundy. Probably not north of Gladstone, but it's going to be somewhere in this area, but we just don't know where. And that's the difference, right? That's 150 mils at Gympie, but did you have a look at how much Brizzy got in that time? Basically 1 mil, right? Through that 150 mils that Gympie just got in 9 hours, Brisbane got 1 mil. Now, if we're wrong about that, and let's say that's further south, Brisbane gets the 150 in 9 hours, and we haven't told anyone about it, that's a problem. There's 3-4 million people there, right? So, that's the difficult part of the process, and that's why we don't want to get too caught up in who's getting the big numbers just yet, because we understand that that's a very large error area between Gladstone and Brisbane about who could be getting that really heavy, intense bit of rain on that Sunday night and Monday. You don't want to be false alarming 4 million people about that process just yet until we've got a bit more clarity on it. So, yeah, Jackie, that's why. Christina, yay. I'm not sure what that's in reference to, but thanks for joining us, Christina. Matt, thanks, Nito. Thanks, Matt. So, a repeat of Sid. Oh, Tanya, I've answered that. Why is that coming up again? All right. Kira, sorry if you covered it. What's Byfield Yeppoon looking like? Or should I just accept we aren't camping this week? Yeah, it's not great camping weather. I don't think anyone in the state should be camping in the east this week. This weekend at least anyway. If we go to Byfield will be St. Lawrence. St. Lawrence will be the closest I've got there to Byfield. So if we take a look, just overall, if we just take a look at what's going on here, we'll definitely see an increase in rainfall. So you can see a bit of shower activity coming down from the Mackay region. And then, we start to get some pretty heavy showers coming through by tomorrow afternoon, evening. And then through Saturday, we're anticipating continuous shower activity, heavy at times, possible thunderstorms inland as well, possible thunderstorms on the coast in the mornings. There's just no sign of any clearance at any stage. So, you probably don't run the risk of getting the sort of rainfall we just talked about for areas further south, but that's still a fair bit of rainfall coming through the region, right? You're definitely not the focus point of attention in this area, but, you're not going to see a beautiful camping weather weekend, all right? So, I would probably avoid it, but then again, I don't know how hard up you are for camping. The big thing to also understand is if you're boating in the area, just be aware that as our low starts to deepen, there is a chance there that we also develop some pretty strong winds in this coastal area. So let me find the euro. Actually, euro might give us a good idea of that. Right, so we can see here there's some pretty strong north to northwesterly winds on the north side of that developing system as we go into Sunday, Monday. And then those northwesterlies can be very, very strong. So very important that you're aware of that. And also the variability in the wind field as we get down into the Wide Bay, Fraser Coast area because of the East Coast low development. And because the uncertainty of the East Coast low development, we don't know what direction those winds are going to be blowing in. Because if that forms up here, that means the southerlies are going to take hold all the way to Rocky. If that forms down here, that means the northerlies are going to take hold all the way to Gladstone, right? So, you know, there's a lot of unpredictability there still for Sunday and certainly Sunday, Monday. Okay, so, yeah, it's one of those things I'd probably be avoiding all outdoor activities there over the weekend throughout this entire region, to be perfectly honest. Yeah. All right. That's for you, Kira. Andrew, hey, Nitso, is your middle... Oh, no, I've already answered that one. Lucy says, hi, Nitso, hope you're okay. Looking forward to this evening. Thanks, Lucy. With Sunday, yes, can hear you. Okay. Munji. Honestly, literally no one cares about NT or WA. Those places might as well not exist. Well, that's your opinion, Munji. I quite like WA and NT, to be honest. I think that they're nice places. I love the moon landscape of the Pilbara. I love Kakadu, Litchfield. Oh, brilliant, mate. That sounds to me like you've never been to these places. Because if you've been to those places, you see some of the natural beauty there, and they're beautiful places, mate. And I don't agree with your comment, with all respect. Procrastinator, winds up near Kuranda, Speewah, near Cairns. The last few hours have been insanely strong. Yeah, absolutely. And let's go there. Let's go there and let's have a look, because that's an important component, right? Because we've been gibbering about this cyclone not having much kick about it. But listen, there is a fair bit of wind on that leading edge. Let's have a look at the high res model. The high res model is going to get that a little bit more spot on, I reckon. All right, so. Yeah, so you can see here through the valleys, through the hills up around Kuranda, you've got some pretty significant winds gusting up around 30 to 35 knots. Because you're in a bit of higher country as well, so you've got a bit of acceleration there because you're a little bit above the surface in those areas. So Yarrabah's another one that's Yarrabah's on the northern side, but that entire peninsula there, look at that, we're getting winds up around 40, pretty close to what we expect in a Category 1 cyclone. And so people that, you know, when we talk about it being weak, we're talking about it relative to cyclones. It's very weak relative to a cyclone, but it is very close to marginally strong enough to be, you know, on that southwestern side at least, being classified as tropical cyclone strength winds. I think we're lacking the sustained element. Yeah, so we're lacking the sustained winds at tropical cyclone intensity, but wind gusts, yeah, they're getting quite close to tropical cyclone intensity gusts. Now, remember, cyclones are classified by their sustained winds, all right? And there's no evidence there to suggest that we're getting sustained gales, and certainly no evidence to suggest we're getting it more than halfway around the centre. So not a cyclone, not a tropical cyclone, but serious wind. And if we take a look at that serious wind as we go into tonight, you'll notice there we do see a bit of an easing. So see that? A bit of an easing through the night. And that's because of our complex structure of our low. It's also because our winds turn more easterly now instead of southerly. And the big thing that we're worried about here, well, not worried, the big thing we need to be alert about is going to be really strong westerly winds coming down the mountain slopes out towards Mossman, Gelatin, especially after all the rain that they've had up in that Daintree area. You know, when you've got that downslope accelerated wind field coming down at 30 to 40 knots, on top of soggy ground, potentially some tree roots that are ready to go. You know, that's the sort of stuff that can topple some trees and do some damage to vegetation, even though, you know, we're sort of still on the just below marginal cyclone intensity. Fact is that they've had a lot of rain up there in the western part of the Daintree. All right, so So that's what we're looking for. And then, as I said, our system sort of comes on the coast, but we don't really care. When the system comes onto the coast, what we care about is the downslope accelerated wind field, all right? This part here, you can see through Gelatin, through Coranda, down towards Smithfield, in those northern suburbs, Trinity, Palm Cove, those sort of areas seeing really strong winds, Red Lynch, White Rock, those sort of areas, just seeing some really strong westerly winds on the western side of the circulation in the morning. So expect those in the morning on the assumption that the cyclone's still here somewhere and pushing down towards the coast. So that's what we're looking for in the Cairns district, and not just Cairns, but generally that far north Queensland coastline is that downslope accelerated wind field, and particularly potent in areas that have already received heaps of rain in the next few hours. All right. So hopefully that explains why Coranda and Speewah are getting significant winds. Don't know what you did, but it sounds much better now, says Lucy. No worries, Liz. Really, I live there and it's been very still. I'm not sure. That was... yeah, I'm not sure what that's for. Steam trains. Just trying to think. Now I know what the term of Night of Noah mentioned. Oh, yes. Thanks, mate. Just hoping we get some in the dams at Calliope and Awunga. I'm not sure where those dams are, Michael Richters. So, yeah, hopefully... Listen, if you're in Gladstone, because I think your question was about Gladstone, the dam catchments are definitely going to get quite a bit of rain, mate. So, hopefully that... yeah, but as I say, I don't know where those dams are. Lucy says, I'm sitting out here with my fur babies and the wind has really kicked up in Kerwin, Townsville. Is this related to this weather event? Yeah, absolutely. And any wind in Townsville right now is related to this weather event. Any wind in North Queensland is related to the weather event for sure. If we take a look at Townsville, with regards to wind, so our big areas of wind are going to be that Mount Elliott, potentially down the bottom of Mount Stewart, getting down into Stewart, Woogaroo, Alligator Creek. Kerwin's sort of not really a focal point of wind. But we do see on the mountain range here out towards Alice River, potentially down the dam, we see some slight accelerated winds. Obviously, Palaranda sticks out like dog's balls, so they get the southeasterly a little bit stronger than, say, the rest of Townsville does, and goes without saying that anyone on Maggie Island's copping a bit of a battering tonight with a strong southeaster, particularly around Picnic Bay, those sort of areas. Cape Cleveland, of course, they're also very susceptible to that. And you can see that these winds up around Mount Elliott, they're pretty fierce tonight, throughout the night. So, yeah, there's some pretty serious wind there. And there's also some pretty serious wind up around the Paluma Range tonight. Other areas that I'd be looking for some serious wind, probably off the coast around Palm. Definitely off the coast around Palm, and also around Ingham and the beaches. And Ingham's a little peculiar spot because Ingham's sort of a gully in between mountain ranges. Yeah, so while a southeasterly isn't really the right wind for them to see funneling, maybe an easterly might be. Now, the big thing there for Townsville is to understand once the southeasterly gives way, once we get that first line of showers and the southeasterly starts to give way and we start to turn the winds northerly, so we'll lose a lot of all that downslope accelerated wind field. We'll start to see our stronger winds up on Harvey's Range and the Paluma Range. And we won't see it coming down through the suburbs of the city anymore, all right? So that east-northeasterly will come in roaring off the ocean. Won't be quite as strong as the southeasterly, but it'll be coming directly at you, so there won't be any cover for Townsville in this one. You're just copping that wind straight on, head on. And that wind, of course, for Townsville is much more conducive to heavy rain than the southeasterly is. All right, so that's why we're going to see quite a few showers developing in the city. And then tomorrow night, what we're looking for is, are we going to extend that, accelerate that northerly and create a squeezing force to create some really intense rain over the city tomorrow night? Okay, so that's what we're looking for, and you can see a potential for that showing up here, where we've got that northwesterly, northeasterly, and bang, this line pushing right over the top of the city. That's what we're concerned about for Townsville as we move into tomorrow night and Saturday morning. Okay? All right. Hey Nitso Bear. Hey Nitso, can I shoot you an email regarding the tut? Yeah, Bear, just be aware, my email reply time at the moment is about 1.5 weeks. I'm just so snowed under with Weather IQ stuff. Yeah, man. I mean, you can send me an email, but please don't expect me to answer it for a week and a half at the moment. On the subscription stuff, if you just talk to me on the comment section, mate, I'll get back to you there. But just to actually access my emails and with all the other stuff that I've got going right now, I just want to, by all means, I try and answer every email I get, but just be aware the wait time's about 1 to 1.5 weeks, man. I'm just snowed under at the moment. We got way too much weather to talk about than to do theoretical stuff. What I suggest to you, Bear, is that you collate like a bunch of these, put them into like a document, and then over the dry season, when I've got a bit more time, we can have a chat about it on Discord and things like that, right? So that's what I would do as a member. I'll be more than happy to talk to you on Discord over the dry season, and we can sort that stuff out. If we're talking about theoretical stuff, I just don't have time, man. I just don't have time to talk theoretical stuff outside of what we talk about in the technical forecast for you. So please don't take that the wrong way. But what I would do is take snapshots of things you want to ask, and then during the dry season, when I'm not doing much, we can talk through some of the theory. Okay? Otherwise, as I say, you might have to wait week and a half, and I don't know how good I'll be looking at it, how well I'll be looking at it right now. We've had 206 mils in Cape Trib since 7 this morning, and yes, you were right with where Wonga is. Yep, cool. Thanks, Joe. Yep. And 206 mils is pretty much what we expected for that area. That's good. Is there an idea when the monsoon will leave this season? No, not at this stage. I think at this stage we're looking after that next Coral Sea cyclone comes in. So after that Solomon Islands system we talked about, Marilyn, I think that might be the death knell of the monsoon. So that one coming in about 10 to 15 days into the Coral Sea, that could be the last of the monsoon, but that's not the last of the rain. Remember, we get a lot of rain in North Queensland. I think you're from North Queensland, if I recall correctly. So we get a lot of rain in North Queensland, not just from the monsoon, but then we're starting to get Coral Sea troughs that start moving westwards, right? That's usually what happens at the end of March and April with the occasional cyclone. So just because the monsoon dies doesn't necessarily mean that the rain will die with it. There's still plenty of rain potential. But we are seeing evidence that the monsoon does die, finally die, in the 20-something of March. Yeah, 20-something of March. I forget the exact date. I can't be stuffed going through and checking it out on models, but it was 20-something of March where we see the monsoon die. And that's it. Then it doesn't come back. Red Lynch copped it serious about an hour ago. Yeah, Jane, watch out for Red Lynch as well. Once the cyclone pushes to your southeast and or south and hits the coast, just watch for those downslopes in the morning, eh? Those westerlies at some stage tomorrow might get pretty fierce as well. So today Red Lynch would have copped southeasterlies, then you might have copped westerlies. Hi Nitz, I'll have to watch the replay a bit late, says Lisa. Yeah, that's no worries, Lisa. You get all my gibbering in the first 40 minutes. Tab, nice breeze in Black River. Yeah, it would be. Yep. Anything for the Atherton Tablelands area. Yeah, Kelly, we talked about that in the first 15 minutes of the video, mate. Couple of big winds coming in from the southeast today for the Tablelands. So I won't go too much into detail here because we did talk about the Tablelands a bit earlier. So, Kelly, here we've got quite a bit of southeasterly, really strong southeasterlies going through the Tablelands, and you can see there through Tinaroo, Tolga, Atherton, quite solid southeasterlies this evening. The expectation will be, though, that the southeasterlies should drop off overnight, early in the morning. So you've still got a few hours of really strong winds, and then we're going to drop those back as we go through the overnight period. Now, tomorrow, as the cyclone pushes to your south, expect those winds to change direction. So they're going to come from the northwest tomorrow. And the other thing you need to be mindful of tomorrow is probably a fair bit of rain around the place, all right? So not going to see the sort of rain that we saw up around the Daintree. So you're not going to see that level of rain, but you are going to see you're going to see some heavy shower activity through the region, maybe an isolated thunderstorm. Yeah, so we will see some heavier rainfall setting in at some stage tomorrow, but listen, it's not going to be tremendous rain. You're going to be disappointed if you're looking for tremendous rain. But yeah, there's certainly something there for you to sink your teeth into on the tablelands. Just be aware of those strong winds for the next few hours. I think that's the key understanding here for the tablelands. Just be aware of those strong winds for the next few hours through the region. And you got a couple of gusty showers, I think, just recently. Yeah, just in the last hour or two, you've had a couple of gusty showers. Probably more of the same for the next few hours. But then we'll start to see those showers coming in from the north once that cyclone comes onto the coast. Okay. Kerry, sorry, Nitsa, I just signed in, so I missed about the rain coming to Townsville. A bit windy. Yeah, Kerry, we talked about... Check out the first 20 minutes of this video when this is up, and we talked about Townsville in a fair bit of detail, or that Townsville coastline in a fair bit of detail. Matt, when are you generally on Discord chatting, Nitso? Not very often during the season, unfortunately, Matt, just because a lot of the time I just don't have the time, and I need to step away from computers just because I spend 4 a.m. is when I start my workday. Usually midday is when I finish my last forecast for the daytime, and then I come back at 6 p.m. for another couple of hours. So that doesn't give me much time to do other stuff. So that time between midday and 6, unless there's something major going on, I stay off a computer as much as I can. So that's I'm not very active on Discord unless there's something major happening, and then I'm active on Discord with the members for sure. Matt, also, anyone who sits here for over an hour listening to nothing but weather talk, don't waste your money on the basic membership. iWall Pro might be the best $70 I've ever spent. Can't recommend enough. Thanks, Matt. Thanks very much, mate. Yeah, we think $70 for what we provide is unbelievable value. We still get the dickheads who go, I'm not paying for weather. All right, stick with the bomb. We don't care. We hope that more people take take your approach though, mate, and that's why we try and provide a really good service, and we try and provide it at a really good price point. Liz, those katabatic winds for a lot of areas. Yes, we talked about those ad nauseum, Liz, so make sure you check those out. Very strong gusts here at Curramine, past few hours, yep, and there will be for the next few hours, and then we'll settle those down a little bit. Diane, very strong gusts here at... Yep, sorry, that was Diane earlier. Kelly, cheers, mate. Not so much rain-wise, pouring, but it's been fairly windy. No worries. Thanks, Kelly. Marilyn, sorry, we'll go back and watch, but thoughts on if the winds will be strong enough to delay planes in the morning at Townsville? No, I don't think so. As we said, Townsville's winds will settle down a little bit tomorrow morning. We don't expect to see as strong a winds in Townsville tomorrow morning than what we're getting tonight, but we actually expect rain in Townsville from tomorrow morning, just on and off through the day, right? And then the possibility of really heavy rain tomorrow night. So for Townsville, I can't imagine... Planes fly through this rubbish all the time, so unless they're on visual flight rules, which I'm assuming won't be the case for the sort of planes you're talking about, and they're going to be on instrument flight, it shouldn't be an issue for them. Right. Sunny greetings from Germany. Wow. What is that? Duff Tata. Good on you, Duff Tata. Thanks, mate. Thanks for tuning in from Germany. That's awesome. I'm sitting outside. Yep. Thanks, mate. Marilyn. Beauty. Hey, Nitso, will there be any significant downstream winds in Bilyana from the mountains just to the south of it? Bilyana's a tough little spot to sort of isolate, isn't it? It's a very, very small area. If I recall, Bilyana is south of Tully. Yeah, south of Tully. I'm sure it's south of Tully. Yeah, it's definitely south of Tully. These are the mountains you're talking about, I'm assuming. But we're not really getting... Are we getting a southerly or are we getting a southeasterly for Bilyana? I think we're getting a southeasterly, mate. So with Bilyana, if we're going to see... Let's have a look. No, I'm not really seeing much in terms of... Oh, there's where it goes southerly. Let's have a look there. No, it doesn't go southerly long enough. Let's have a look in the morning. Yeah, there's nothing there that really stands out for Bilyana. I mean, let's have a look. Let's have a look at the high res model, eh? It's one of those really tricky spots because if it's slightly off, if that forecast wind is slightly off, then yeah, you could see, if it's more southerly than what's being forecast, yeah, you could see some downslope accelerate. Oh, there we go, a little bit going on there tonight. Doesn't get to hectic levels. Just give me a look at that topography again of the area. Yeah, so if we get something that, there's a chance there at a little bit of funneling through there, if we've got a south-southeasterly, and then maybe a bit of downslope out the back here if we've got a south-southeasterly. Southerly would be the one that I'd be most concerned about, would be that downslope acceleration from a southerly. But if you're not going to get that, you're getting a south-southeasterly. Yeah, I'm not going to say no, but I'm not going to say it's one of the areas I'd be focused on for downslopes. Yeah, and once it turns easterly, so once we get into the morning rain, damn it, once we turn easterly, it's not really an area I'd be paying attention to at all. But look, for the night, yeah, there could be a couple of fairly strong gusts there, but it's not an area that, you know, is being targeted as a real hotspot of that downslope accelerated field. Yeah. All right. We got a bit of a blow earlier here at Milla, but not too much rain today. Yeah. I don't think for that Tablelands area, even Milla, which is sort of not technically Tablelands, is a sort of more into the ranges area. It's probably not a real focal point of rainfall. Yeah, so it doesn't make sense that it makes sense that you haven't seen a hell of a lot of rain there yet. That might change, especially if we start getting those little lines, those little strips that we talked about of really heavy rain once the system has crossed the coast. But for now, yeah, it's been it's been pretty slim pickings, hasn't it? If you're not in the Daintree, it's been very slim pickings. Yado, amazing value for such coverage. Huge work behind all the work you do. Thanks big time. Thanks, Yado. Thanks for being a supporter. You've been a supporter of ours for 15 years, for basically as long as we've been around. That's awesome, mate. Thank you very much. And I'm glad you're enjoying your subscription, and I'm glad you're finding it really valuable. Dumb question, what's a downslope? It's downslope, when we're talking about that, we're talking about winds that accelerate as they move down the mountain, and they're compressed as they move down the mountain. And so as they compress, they accelerate down the mountain slope. And usually what happens is the wind just at the bottom, just past the bottom of the mountain, is where the wind is strongest. And that's where we see that greatest. Because right at the bottom of the mountain, sometimes we're a little bit more protected, but just a few hundred meters away from that is where we see that real intensity of all that wind coming down the mountain slope. And a lot of the time we see the winds at the top of the mountain are stronger than the winds below. And so we get that stronger flow, then compressed down to the surface and gushes out. And those suburbs that are within a few kilometres of the mountains, you've got to be within a few k's. It's very, very, very skinny area of impact, but you've got to be within a couple of k's of those mountains. And geez, you see some massive winds. I remember I lived in Cairns for a little while, and we were moving between, was it Smithfield and Earlville. And so we went from, we lived in Smithfield for 6 months, we lived in Earlville for 6 months, and Smithfield, man. I remember going through the wet season in Smithfield. Holy Jesus, there were some massive winds coming through Smithfield, coming down that Coranda range when there was a monsoon around. Like, there'd be nothing going on, not even a shower in the sky, not hardly a cloud in the sky on some of those days, and just crazy winds. A wheelie bin would be down the road. Yeah, just incredible how localised they are, because you talk to anyone else outside of Smithfield and they go, oh, what winds, you gibberer? You know, like, that's the sort of thing that we see with those downslopes. Really, really narrow areas of impact, but geez, those winds can get up there. They're usually about 30 to 40 knots is what we usually see. And they can be pretty lethal for a boatie as well, especially if there's mountain ranges near the coast. They can be pretty lethal if you're a boatie and you're going out and you're thinking, oh yeah, today's going to be 5-10 knots, and then you go out and that downslope acceleration hits you in the morning, and suddenly you're getting 30-40 knots and you're going, holy shit, where did this come from? So yeah, very lethal if you're an inshore boatie in the morning and you're not expecting it. Yeah, it's pretty dangerous. Obviously very dangerous working at heights too in those western suburbs and those bottom of the range suburbs. Yeah. Was just out to Double Island in 30 knots. Good fun. That Double Island, is that... Where's Double Island? I think that's southeast Queensland, isn't it? Double Island? Yeah. Probably not advising... Wouldn't be advising to do that. All right, folks, thanks very much for watching tonight. It's been a long one. Hopefully, it's been a very informative one. If you have liked it and you're on YouTube, please give us a like and a subscribe on YouTube. That'd be great. We don't have very many followers on YouTube. I think we've only got a few thousand, but we're trying to build that. The YouTube channel's been around for 14 years. We just haven't worked on it. And yeah, if you want to support us financially and want to get access to all this stuff that we talk about every single day, head over to weatheriq.com.au/subscribe and have a choice of those options there, and hopefully you get some really good value out of it. And we thank you very much for your support. And if you can't, that's okay. That's okay. Just stick with us every couple of nights. Our next one of these is going to be on, what's today? Today's Thursday, so our next one will be Saturday night, okay? Saturday night, and our topic of conversation primarily is going to be southern and central Queensland, because by that stage, we'll probably have figured out how much rain they're going to get and how bad those winds are going to get down there in southern and central Queensland, particularly the eastern parts. But thank you very much for watching tonight. It's been a long night. Time for me to go to bed and get ready for a big day tomorrow.